All right, Brett, it's recording.
Great, Stone, thank you. And let's go to slide 1, Stone. For everybody that's listening in, welcome to the Perry Johnson Registrar's Food Safety Webinar for Organic Hemp and Crops for CBD product certification. I'm also excited to have Anthony Silvernail on board from Kentucky Hemp Co-op. Anthony, can you hear me okay?
Yeah, I can hear you. My slide hasn't changed back to the first one, the title slide.
Okay, yeah, me either. Stone, you want to get that back up for us?
Is that working?
There we go.
We're looking now.
Okay, well, welcome everybody. We're all in a world of webinars and Zoom meetings, and occasionally we do have some technical difficulties. So, great. So let's get to the next slide here, Stone. And do you have our polling question, Stone, for everybody?
Good.
Great. Okay, everybody. So if you can help us out here, we just like to get a feel for where everybody's from and what part of the industry that you're in. So if you're a farmer or a processor, product manufacturer, consultant, or laboratory, if you can click on that, it's going to give us a feel where everybody's from, and we can take a look at those results and move on to the next slide here and talk about the Perry Johnson Company, Stone. Give everybody about another 10 seconds or so to click on that. Great.
All right, concluded that, and then here are the results.
Interesting.
Item, yeah. About 40% manufacturer, 60% control.
Yeah, great. So we have a lot of consultants out there looking for more information, and we also have some producers out there. If you're not familiar with the Perry Johnson companies, our founding company, Perry Johnson Registrars, about 25 years ago, we are a global certification body for numerous ISO standards, which many of you on this call may or may not be familiar with, but there's the classic ISO 9001. We do audits and certification audits for aerospace, medical devices, information security, you name it. And about 8 years ago, under the registrar, we now have Perry Johnson Registrar's Food Safety, and that division is a globally recognized certification body for all the major food safety certifications. This could be GMP, Good Manufacturing Practices, HACCP, all the way up to the globally recognized GFSI standards like Safe Quality Food, SQF, BRC for British Retail Consortium, Global Gap, Primus, things of that nature. Our corporate headquarters are in Troy, Michigan, but we have offices around the globe, and we also have clients and auditors also around the globe. Our sister company, Perry Johnson Lab Accreditation, is a globally recognized accrediting body for accrediting testing labs to the ISO 17025 standard, which we'll review and get into a little bit more here in the presentation. But we can go to the next slide, Stone, and I'm excited to have Anthony Silvernail on board here. Anthony went to school in our home state here of Michigan and is in Kentucky right now. Anthony, you want to say hi to everybody and give a little background to yourself?
Okay, yeah, hi, I'm Anthony, go by Tony. I did grow up in Michigan, originally up in Ionia County, went to Michigan State for my undergrad in biochemistry, ended up coming down to Kentucky for grad school at UK, ended up staying. I've been in the organic world for well over 20 years. And I was working at Kentucky State University as a researcher, and I'm an organic farmer. And more recently, I am an organic transition trainer, where I go out throughout the state. I work through OAK, the Organic Association of Kentucky, where I go out and work with farmers transitioning to organics. And more recently than that, even the last couple of years, I've been branching out and working with other growers in other states, Florida, Tennessee, Indiana, Michigan, Minnesota, are just some of the ones I've been working with. Oh, and North Carolina too. So, and I've worked with a bunch of different certifying agents. Obviously here in Kentucky, most work with Kentucky Department of Ag, and I know that. And just this past year, I become, me and this Dr. Sean Lucas started the Kentucky Organic Hemp Co-op, where we're just a group of small growers. We're still just a small group of small growers. 2019 sort of hit us hard, just like it hit the whole industry hard. And but I still grow vegetables. I'm certified, and I do everything from wholesale, retail, restaurant, and individual sales for my products.
Great. That's awesome, Tony. Excited to get your input on some of these subjects we're about to dive into. So for the next slide, basically the whole point of this webinar, we're focusing on hemp and organic. There's many other angles to the organic program that the USDA has. But for today, we're going to be focusing mostly on hemp and also how that translates into the CBD products. Stone, if you want to get to the next slide for us. So basically, organic certification covers all types of agricultural products, different businesses, seed suppliers, so forth and so on. And let's dive right into it. At our company, we do get a lot of phone calls from farmers looking to get organic crop certification, and they either have land that has been basically virgin or not used for the last few years, and really need to know where to start with the process. So, what is the history of your land? What has gone on there in the past? Have you owned it for the last 3 years, which is one of the regulations that I'm going to have Tony comment on here, in a little bit, or has someone else had that land, right? What was planted on the farm prior to you getting this land? Was it tobacco? Was it cotton? Was it tomatoes? And can that previous owner attest to it being fallow or unfarmed or not having harmful pesticides? So Tony, what have you seen in terms of farmers starting with a new piece of land or digging into the history of the dirt? What have been your experiences? What would you suggest in this kind of initial situation?
Well, you mentioned it here in your first statement there with your first bullet. It says, what's the history? What has been done there? That will define pretty much what you can do and what you're going to do in the future. There are the rules in the National Organic Program rules that says that if a prohibitive non-organic substance has been added to the ground, there's a 36-month transition period from the time of that application till the time of which it can be certified organic. So let's say you use an uncertified seed that was treated, or it was GMO, or you used a fertilizer, a conventional fertilizer, or a pesticide, herbicide, whatever. Then you have to go through the 36-month period. You mentioned as far as the previous land use, almost all certifiers as KDA, QCS, OneCert, and whoever, they do have what's called the previous land use declaration. I just call it the PLU. And it's an affidavit that can be signed by either you or the previous field land manager, attesting to the fact that none of the conventional products have been added for the past 36 months. Accrediting agents will take your word on that, but they do have the right to test for that. So if you do sign that and they're somewhat suspect, they will order a soil test and they can tell if a herbicide, or insecticide or fungicide has been added or whatever to that piece of ground. So, just be aware that, you can be checked that way. So
okay. And so
that will set the table up that if you can get certified or not within, this season or next season.
And that's up to the certifier to determine how many samples they want to take out of that 5-acre plot, if they want to walk right into the dead center of it or work around the edges or what have you. It's up to them to determine what type and how many samples are taken.
Yeah, they do hold that option. I've only known it here in Kentucky happening a few times. They've generally, KDA, Kentucky Department of Ag, has generally taken people's word on it, but they were correct. I know they denied certification for a couple because it did test positive. And, then it came out that, yeah, they did use something the previous season and were trying to just game the system. So,
Okay. So now we're going to go to the next slide, Stone. So we've had our land, we're getting it ready, we've been through all these items. What kind of, we also get a lot of questions about the seeds. Are they certified organic? Is there a certificate of analysis as to, how much THC is in the seeds? To start with this process, obviously the seeds need to be certified organic. They need to be non-GMO. Obviously, no presence of synthetic coatings. Where are we at in the world of hemp seed right now, Tony, in terms of what you've seen, the quality of the seeds, where to go? Is this something where you should buy through or look, for the OMRI stamp, or what's your experience been with the whole seed situation?
I don't know. I'll correct that. I only know of a few seed hemps that are actually OMRI certified, that are organic hemp seed. A lot of the seed that is out there in the hemp world is just untreated. We're still relatively new. That trying to get a certified organic seed is not. However, there are in the rules, within the NOP rules, it's, what is it, 205, 204. You are allowed to use non-organic seeds as long as it's non-GMO and as long as it's not treated, as you had mentioned, and you cannot find it in the organic state. Case in point, I use cowpea. Just as an example, I use cowpea in my high tunnels for a summer cover crop. You still cannot find them organically, but I find them just untreated, and obviously they're not GMO, so I can use them. I just have to document that, and that's all part of your record keeping that you have to do for organic certification.
Okay, great. And in terms of, what was on the land before for pesticides and fertilizers, Stone, this would be, I think, slide 8. What is allowed, what's not allowed? And Tony, do you want to kind of give a little overview of how OMRI works and what your experiences have been with the NOP program? And, how does a farmer or somebody getting into planting the hemp crop, how do they know that they're getting into the correct types of products or fertilizers and not shooting themselves in the foot?
Well, there's a certain, we mentioned earlier, there's certain qualifying agencies like OMRI. We mentioned PCO, the California Food Safety, and the Washington State, that actually certify products that are okay to use in organics. However, with hemp, a lot of the stuff, such as insecticides, we had a big issue last year with earworm that you'd find in corn and everything, and you can use an organic product to use on them that works really well is spinosad. You get that in Entrust. However, it's not labeled for hemp yet. So that's one of the lags we're seeing with the hemp. Some of these are so new that even some of the organic pesticides that are labeled, that can be used, are not yet labeled for hemp. So that's something that has to be worked through as this crop keeps developing. And this is one of the things, the growers down here in Kentucky, we just got to keep reminding people this is a new crop. So we're getting a lot of insects. Prior to 2019, never had an issue with earworm in the bud, but man, they came on full bore for us in August. And then we started also to get certain fungal issues, which I've never had issues with that in any of my other vegetable crops in these fields, and all of a sudden it shows up. And pathologists from University of Kentucky came out, and they're saying they're finding it all over. They don't know what vectors it or what causes it. So there's a lot of questions out there, and that's sort of the things that we're trying. Everybody's working through this right now.
Okay. So really, as you know, like with Perry Johnson Food Safety, and we're a certifier for the organic program, we're probably going to be seeing some things where some farmers are a little more adept at instituting products and pesticides from other crops that are allowable that just haven't gotten the stamp of approval yet for the hemp world. Is that basically what you're seeing right now?
Yes,
Okay.
we're seeing that. I believe there actually was a BT product that was Kentucky Department of Ag had put out last year, stuff that's allowable to use on hemp. However, a lot of the stuff that they were saying was allowable, I have found not to be very, the efficacy of it has not been very great. So I try to shy people away that, it probably won't work. You know, you're invited to try that. But, you know, stuff like spinosad, organic, stuff that have been able to be used on other organic crops, but has not yet been labeled for hemp, you know, we're sort of waiting on that to get caught up. And I'm hoping maybe this season they'll come out with something. Each year they're coming out with something new. So
good. So for those on the webinar that are new to this and still getting the overall information, you can see on the slide here, omri.org is a great resource for products that have met the organic seal of approval, if you will, and can get you to the, get you to the finish line and also be a good check of those products. Stone, you want to, as we kind of shift gears here and get into products, we were going to do our second polling question. For those out there in the webinar world, you want to get that up, Stone? Great. So basically, where's everybody from? Are you hemp on the East Coast? Are you from the Midwest, the West Coast? We're just curious to see where everybody's from. We usually do this on all of our webinars to get a feel for where our audience is from. So if everybody can give a quick click on that, we'd sure appreciate it. And we'll leave that up for about another 10 seconds or so, and then we're going to start talking about organic CBD products and how that transfers in from the farmers. Okay, interesting. 50% from the East Coast and another third from the West Coast. Apparently no one from the Midwest wanted to jump on board today, so good to see. All right, so let's get to the next slide, Stone. And so let's change gears here. Organic hemp, organic CBD. Let's leave that bullet point up just right there, Stone. So we've had there's a lot of information out there right now on you've grown the hemp, it's been extracted, you have the oil, now you're making organic CBD products of one kind or another. We've all seen what's out there with updates from the FDA in terms of labeling, how you can label what CBD does and doesn't do. You can't make any claims, and there's probably a whole nother webinar that we could have just on what's happening with the FDA. But in general, I found it pretty interesting that if you are mislabeling, as of the other day on the USDA website, you can be hit up for almost $18,000 for each violation. So that can clearly add up pretty quick. But for overall labeling of products, just from a general kind of bird's eye view, according to the USDA summary, if you're going to say it's 100% organic, it needs to be 100% organic, which is our next bullet point, Stone. And it's got to include all organically produced ingredients, including water and salt. If you want to simply just label organic, it's got to be 95% organic, excluding water and salt, and you can still do the USDA organic seal. And then finally, made with organic ingredients, you cannot put the USDA organic seal, but you have to at least say on your labeling that we've used X, Y, and Z organic labels and, organic ingredients, and put that on your labeling. So you can at least, I guess, use that to your advantage, but you certainly want to make sure you're labeling correctly. And again, all the organic ingredients need to be labeled correctly in their labeling box. And while we're talking about this, Tony, I don't know if you've seen any of this come down the pipeline in Kentucky or some of your other clients, but what's your input on the FDA and what you're seeing right now with products and their labeling? You think people are getting smart to this now, or do you think there's still a lot of companies out there that are just simply mislabeling?
Well, I think there's a lot of mislabeling, but there's also, unfortunately, like wiggle room. I talked a little bit about that with you earlier, where you see that with some fertilizers, where, technically, if it's a certain level, they can use like organic, in a certain context. And I've seen growers and other hemp-related products putting the organic out there and putting it with an X on it, like organics. And you sort of see that. I call that the almost. A lot of people like the almost organic. And anybody that knows me knows my analogy in which I use, as far as, it's sort of like being pregnant. You're either one way or the other. There's no almost there. When you're organic and certified, you're there. But you are seeing, with this being a relatively new industry and people looking at it to try to jump on board without actually doing the legwork and without actually doing the work, we get a lot of that. And I've seen it with growers actually here in Kentucky. And I think the greatest police and the most vicious policing we have with organics is other organic growers, because organic growers we're sort of a close-knit group, and if you're not doing it right, somebody will turn you in.
Right.
I can almost guarantee it. But yeah, you do see that people trying to parse the words and sort of parse the labeling. But there are, usually what will happen is you show the degree in which you can be penalized. They'll usually give you warnings and then allow you to correct it. And if you still persist, that's when they'll come down. That's when they'll drop the hammer and everything.
Sure.
So, but yeah, it's very interesting. And there are a lot of options too. I don't know if you're going to get into this as far as there is a lot of, processing options that can be certified organic too.
Okay, well, do you want to dive into that a little bit while we're talking about in terms of the organic process of extraction, of the types of extraction, or what? Okay.
Well, there's, some of the main ones that you can see. CO2 extraction can be certified organic. You just have to, at certain control points throughout the process, just got to make sure the cleaning and anything else in there, your ethanol, if you're winterizing or whatever, it's got to be organic. So you have your CO2, your ethanol, and actually your oil extractions can be certified organic, as long as like your coconut oil and stuff is certified organic and your ethanol is certified organic, and all of your cleaning agents and whatever you're doing. And that's all part of the other step of getting certified organic. Because as you know, there's like 4 scopes, what they call scopes, as far as getting for certified organic. There is the farm, crop, certification, livestock, processing, and wild harvest. This would fall under the processing scope that, all agencies will certify you that way.
Great. That's awesome. And this is kind of a little bit getting off track, but I found it interesting in the industry, and some of our participants out there may have seen this, but, aside from organic, just the CBD products itself and how those labels are being, actually the claims are being mislabeled. And we've actually had some clients and that have received some, warning letters from the FDA in terms of how they're listing their products. And CBD food product is now basically illegal, and it's pretty interesting. There's also a scenario in Minnesota that came up a couple of weeks ago where there was a secret shopper situation where I think it was about 27 to 30 products were tested, and the CBD amounts were completely incorrect, where the CBD was either non-existent or double what was claimed. and was also testing hot for pesticides and residual solvents. So I think there's going to be a lot of things out there in the industry, like you mentioned, where the organic farmers are kind of a small knit group, where I think the consumers as a whole are going to start watching out for who's actually got a clean product and who's backing it up with being organic or having their GMP done or a certain ISO program. And it really seems like the industry is starting to self-regulate itself until the states can get caught up on what regulations are going to have in place. Okay, Stone, let's get to slide 12. So here's the exciting part, right? Paperwork, manuals, procedures. You're going for organic certification, whether you're a farmer with a crop, extractor, or making a product. You need to have your organic system plan in place. It goes back to the old quality ISO adage of, document what you do and do what you document. And like the USDA says, it is the cornerstone of any application for certification and a pretty big jumping off point for transitioning to organic. So as we go to the next slide, Stone, Tony, what would you say in terms of anybody going through organic and your experiences with being in this program? What do you think about the paperwork? What's your insight on how somebody can keep this simple, and what do they really need to document and look out for?
Well, it's like anything, nobody, like you said, nobody likes to do it, but I've been doing this now for 15 years and I'm still learning better ways of doing it as you go along. I find it when I go to farmers and I present the organic grower plan or organic systems plan, however you want to label it, it's your business plan. It's how you're actually going to manufacture your product, how you're actually going to grow it. And for a grower, a lot of times this is their first time for really documenting stuff like this. I think in your instance, in the industry, a lot of these people have already been doing this for years, so this is just another step for them. But for growers, it's a process of learning to do this. And then you can go back on that. If you've documented, you may think you remember something from 2 months ago, but you don't. And so it's actually a good reference document. It's good all the way around, in my perspective. But that is one of the biggest things, like you pointed out there. It is the cornerstone for getting certified organic. And it is one of the toughest things, especially if you're looking at processing. The processors I worked with last year, this was all new. So I was in contact with the certifying agents. Between certifying agencies, it's always good to have a good line of communication as to what they will accept. As far as Kentucky Department of Ag, who I have the most experience with being here in Kentucky, I know what they'll accept as far as field logs, as far as records, sales records. I do Excel spreadsheets. I've seen some real good work done with Google Docs now. That's like the younger crowd. I'm sort of the dinosaur, but I need to get into like Google Docs. It's funny, think of myself that way. But definitely talk with whoever your certifying agent is going to be and see what they accept. I switched over to OneCert this year. So even though I've been doing it a while, I've had communication instead of going, okay, this is what I've done. Do you accept this? And usually they do, and maybe with some slight modifications. I had the same issue with QCS with some growers, Quality Certification Services there out of Gainesville, Florida, where I was working with some growers down in Florida. They did things, they just wanted a little bit, the presentation and the documentation just a little bit different. So it's always good, never assume, and that goes all the way through the organic program. Never assume anything. Always definitely make sure that you're doing it the way they want it. It'll save you headaches in the long term. In the short term, it just keeps you moving too.
Great. So, and like we say in the slide here, obviously, and Tony, I think you would agree, the USDA website just has a plethora of information.
Hey,
and yes.
My Wi-Fi.
I'm sorry, Tony?
Hey, Jake, turn off Wi-Fi.
Okay, well, I think we had a little. Are you all good, Tony?
I think I may have lost. Hey, Brett, you there?
Yeah, we're here. Tony, hold tight. For everybody out there, I think we just had some technical difficulties with Tony, but for those listening still, basically the USDA website has an unbelievable amount of resources and information for getting your paperwork together, your quality manuals, things of that nature. So obviously we would defer to that website because there's no point in trying to reinvent the wheel there. As we get here to our 30 minutes and kind of start to wrap things up here, our last portion, Stone, do you want to go to the next slide and get our last polling question out for everybody? And, basically, why are you on the website? What types of certifications do you need? Is this for organic? Are you doing organic as part of a bigger picture for your GMP program? Are you doing organic as part of a GAP, Good Agricultural Practices program? Or are you just kind of researching your options and getting your information together? So as Tony gets his... I'm back
on. Sorry about that.
He's back on. Okay. Tony's back on. Good. That's all right. So Stone, let's keep that up for about another 10 seconds or so. Tony, while we're talking about certifications, and obviously Perry Johnson Companies covers all of these.
Yep.
And well into the ISO world, what are you seeing for farmers and folks in the organic world right now? Is it just organic? Are they looking at ISO 9001 or coupling it with a GMP program? Or what's your feel of the pulse out there for what a lot of organic folks are looking to do?
Well, right now, just getting growers certified organic with their hemp, that's like the first big step.
Sure.
Last year, there was a big push to get growers certified organic. I started using the term, hemp the gateway crop, because it sort of got people interested in organic. But to be a truly organic system, you also got to be looking at what else you're going to be growing. I think in rotations, because that's obviously a big part of what being organic is. However, with just hemp, I think, you would probably be able to answer this better because I'm just a farmer. But, I think as we go forward with this hemp crop and as the FDA keeps playing around with what is required, I think we are going to have to be GAP certified with our handling. If it does go beyond just a nutrient supplement and it does get qualified as a pharmaceutical product or something like that, the growers will definitely have to step up the game. And the organic will be just like the first step that I see. And then there would have to be a gap. You'd have to have all of your handling and your processing of just the raw product. You'd have to get that third-party audited in some form or fashion. I mean, you'd probably be able to give a better bird's eye view of that than me, but I believe when they we're all going to be
what we have been seeing on the radar is, obviously some or many companies out there are vertically integrated. So they're growing, they're producing, and making the final product. So it seems to me that for the crop end of it, organic and good agricultural practices is kind of a no-brainer. And then you want to have your GMP and your good manufacturing practices, which a plug for a company, Perry Johnson, we are the only ANSI-approved GMP program right now in the United States, which we're pretty proud of. And our program manager, Lauren Maloney, was instrumental in putting together. So I want to give a shout out to her. But it seems to be organic and GAP for the farmers, GMP, and then either an ISO 9001 or even a more robust, possibly a GFSI level certification, and getting that under an ISO type certification is what we're seeing. Okay, so we've got the poll up. We've seen our results. Stone, you want to go to the next slide here? Okay, so testing requirements and what to look for. Just a brief overview of this because we've had some questions about this and it does come up, and I'm sure, Tony, you've had to kind of deal with this over the years. ISO 17025, it is the most globally recognized standard that any testing lab can be accredited to. What does this have to do with the hemp world? Depending on what state you're in, if you own a laboratory and you want to test hemp for even just THC content, you would need to be ISO 17025 accredited, which basically that laboratory is showing that they're competent enough in their data, their traceability, how they validated their methods to give out consistent, good, reliable data. What does this matter to you as a grower or a producer? You want to have a lab on board that's accredited so that you know you're getting the correct results. And what's been happening is that it's not just for the THC levels, it's also for the pesticides, the heavy metals, the residual solvents, and having a certificate of analysis that shows that you've got a clean product and that you've kept an eye on that through the whole process. So I just wanted to touch on that because some of you out there may see this ISO 17025 acronym. And if you're not familiar with it, start becoming familiar with it, because the labs that are going to be in business and stay in business and get the state licensure are going to need to have this accreditation. For instance, I might have mentioned this earlier, in Texas, if you want to test hemp and have a state license in Texas, you have to be accredited to ISO 17025. And as a hemp farmer, you need to use a lab that's accredited to have those results. So as part of the bigger picture, just wanted to touch on that. Okay, finally, how do you become certified? How do we start the process? What are the steps to certification here on the next slide here, Stone? So there's basically 5 steps that the USDA has lined out that we'd like to go through. You know, obviously develop your organic system plan, get that plan implemented, start having your farm or your process within the organic system plan. Contact Perry Johnson or another certifying body to get on board, fill out your application, talk about the cost and service, and then have your inspection done. Get your audit and receive that decision from the certifier. Tony, is this pretty much in the same realm of your process? Or are there parts of this process that you think are more important than others?
Yeah, I would, except for step 2, once you develop, I always use a 5-step, but I look at it a little differently. Obviously, the first, it could be 6 steps really. First step would be identify your certifying agent, you know, whether it be Perry Johnson or whoever, and then contact them, and then they will give you the outline and the organic systems plan to fill out, which then you develop. And once you get that done, then it goes in for an internal review by your certifying agent, followed by an inspection, followed by a final review, and then you get the final, like, thumbs up or thumbs down by the certifier and stuff like that. So yeah, it's pretty much what you do. It sounds real simple. It's not. Obviously, the development of the organic systems plan is the biggest step for people coming into this, especially if you haven't done it before. And I always say it's like eating an elephant. You do it one bite at a time, and that's the way you have to look at it. Because it is a big document, and you are pulling together a lot of records and a lot of history when you're starting out that you all have to make sure. And people have to keep in mind too, when they're developing this organic systems plan, 2 of the steps, the first review and the final review, are done by people that don't come out to your farm at all or come out to your processing. So you definitely have to make sure that you're very clear in what you're doing and how you're doing it. So that's always, you know, just putting it on there. Well, I can understand that. Well, you know, the certifier sitting behind a desk in an office a couple hundred miles away is not going to when they're reviewing it. So you definitely have to be careful when you fill it out and be as thorough as possible without being redundant with it all.
Great. Okay, well, we appreciate everybody's time. We've got some time here for some questions. Stone, if there's some questions that have come up, you can read those off right now. There's a couple of questions that I had written down that some other folks had emailed me, and kind of, Tony, wanted to get your input on this. what is the state of hemp right now? Not just in Kentucky. I know things have changed over the last year or so, and it seems like there's basically a big, I guess, glut, for lack of a better word, in terms of the biomass that's out there and the supply and demand. What would be your take on that, Tony?
Oh, definitely. I mean, I myself am sitting on flower from last year, and there's a huge glut, way overproduction, and possibly, I mean, I also believe some of what the FDA was doing last fall sort of create a backlog in a lot of the supply chain. And now we're seeing processors going out of business here in Kentucky. So, I mean, I still really truly believe it's a great product. I use it myself. But I believe, it's a growing industry. We're an infant industry. So we had growing pains last year, big time. And I think that permeates all the way from soil to oil as far as where the pain was felt. But going forward, I'm seeing a lot of growers are sitting on the sideline this season, but going forward into 2021, we're hoping that things sort of straighten themselves out and people be more realistic too about it. I think a lot of people got into the hemp with the idea that they're going to do 1 year crop and then retire on the beach in Florida. And, farming doesn't work. Farming, it just never works out. However, I think for a grower such as myself and a lot of people I work with, I think it can do better than a very good vegetable crop like steak tomatoes or something like that. You can pull way more, even with the prices where they are now, you can still do better with hemp. And I believe as the industry grows, we will see more development of the grain, of hemp grain and hemp fiber, as the industry stabilizes and becomes more of a mainstream crop, and it'll get more into some of the bigger crops over in the Midwest, and Minnesota, Wisconsin, Iowa, some of the big field crops, you'll see the grain and fiber over in that way. And maybe some of the smaller boutique for oil extraction, everything like that, will be maybe us as small scale organic growers, throughout the country.
Sure. Great. Well, everybody, we've our 30 minutes went to 45 minutes, but that's fine. This has been great, Tony. I really, really appreciate you being on board with us and giving your insight to this program. Our last slide here, which folks will be able to download on our website after the webinar is done. If you'd like to get in touch with Tony and pick his brain about other things in the future, his information's there. If you'd like to speak with us about our organic hemp and cannabis programs or any of our ISO programs at the Perry Johnson Companies, my information is up there also. So for myself and Stone and the Perry Johnson Companies and Tony, we'd like to say thank you so much for being on the webinar, and I hope everybody has a great day.
Thanks, Brett.
All right. Thank you, Tony. Bye-bye, everybody.